Some questions don't arrive as questions. They arrive as a weight, a persistent, low hum behind the chest that follows you into ordinary moments, into grocery stores, into Tuesday afternoons, into the space between sleeping and waking. Are we supposed to be together? Not will we be together. Not when. Are we supposed to? That word, supposed, carries the entire architecture of the question. It implies design. It implies that somewhere in the blueprint of things there is an answer already written, and if you could just find it, you could finally exhale. Here is what I want to offer you today. Not comfort dressed as truth, and not the cold dismissal of something you know you have felt. I want to offer you something rarer. Clarity. Because the real question, the one underneath the one you're asking, is not about another person at all. Let's begin with what we know, not what we hope, not what we fear. What we actually, verifiably know about why certain connections feel unlike anything else in human experience. Carl Jung wrote about the psyche's tendency toward wholeness, what he called individuation. The self is not static. It is always moving toward integration, and certain relationships, he observed, act as mirrors. Not gentle, decorative mirrors, but the kind that show you what you have refused to see. The person who catalyzed everything you're feeling is not simply someone you love. They are, in the most precise psychological sense, a projected self-complex made visible. Every one of us carries within us parts of ourselves that were deemed unsafe to express. The parts we buried in childhood to receive love, to survive, to belong. Jung called these buried parts the shadow. And when we encounter a soul whose wounds and gifts map almost exactly onto our own buried landscape, the nervous system does not respond with calm recognition. It responds with electricity. This is not mythology. This is neuroscience dressed in ancient language. When two people share what researchers call limbic resonance, a deep, below-conscious attunement of nervous systems, the body registers it as significance. The brain releases the same neurochemical cascade as a survival event. Because to the nervous system, it is a survival event. You are not imagining the intensity. You are not weak for feeling it this deeply. Now, here is where psychological understanding intersects with something that science hasn't fully mapped yet, and it's important to honor that edge. Quantum field theory has demonstrated in controlled conditions that particles, which have once interacted, continue to influence each other regardless of physical distance. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. He meant it as a criticism, and yet, it's real. Some physicists have begun, cautiously, to apply this framework to consciousness itself. The idea that awareness, like particles, can remain entangled across time and space. I am not asking you to accept this as doctrine. I am asking you to sit with the possibility that what you feel as an inexplicable, gravitational pull toward one specific soul may not be imagination. It may be information. The question is, what is it informing you of? Because here is what most people miss. The intensity of a connection is not, by itself, evidence of its destiny. Intensity is evidence of depth, of how much unresolved material two people are reflecting back to each other. The stronger the pull, the more precisely the mirroring is happening. And mirroring, at that level of accuracy, is genuinely rare. It explains why the connection feels singular, why no one else seems to compare. Not because no one else is worthy, but because no one else has yet touched the same, specific, buried frequency inside you. The mirroring works in both directions. What you see in them that moves you, the beauty, the depth, the potential, is real. And what you see in them that frustrates or wounds you, the withdrawal, the inconsistency, the fear, is equally real and equally yours to examine. This is not a comfortable idea, but it is a liberating one, because it means the work, the actual lasting work of this connection, does not depend on their participation. It was always happening inside you. The nervous system needs to be understood here, not bypassed. When the body is in a state of hyperactivation around a specific person, cycling between longing and loss, hope and grief, it is not malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is trying to resolve an attachment pattern that was formed long before this person entered your life. This connection did not create the wound. It located it with surgical precision, and that is ultimately the nature of these rare and destabilizing encounters. They do not arrive to complete you. They arrive to reveal you, to surface what has been waiting beneath the ordinary rhythm of your days for exactly this quality of confrontation. The pain is real, the love is real, and both of them are pointing with extraordinary clarity in the same direction, inward. Here's the shift. We have been asking whether we are supposed to be together. But what if together does not mean what we think it means? What if the entire framework of that question is built on an assumption worth examining? We live inside a culture that measures the success of a connection by its continuity. If it lasts, it was real. If it ends or stalls or never fully forms, it was a failure, a mistake, something to recover from. But nature does not operate this way, and the deeper parts of the human soul do not operate this way either. In nature, a river does not ask whether it is supposed to reach the ocean. It simply follows the gradient, the path of least resistance, carved by its own pressure, its own depth, its own accumulated flow. Sometimes two rivers merge and travel together all the way to the sea, and sometimes one river flows underground, invisible to the surface, and yet everything it touches from below blooms. The presence of impact does not require the presence of the person. This is not a consolation. It is a structural fact about how influence moves through a life. Consider the function of a key. A key is not lesser than the door it opens. It is not a failed version of the door. It is not meant to live inside the lock permanently. Its purpose is completed in the opening. What comes after the opening? The light, the space, the movement into something new. That is what the key was always for. Some souls enter your life as destinations, and some enter as initiators. The tragedy is not in the distinction. The tragedy is in spending years waiting at the threshold, key in hand, refusing to walk through. Now, the other side of this deserves equal honesty, because some of these connections do resolve into union, into sustained, grounded, embodied partnership. This happens. It is real. But it does not happen through waiting. It does not happen through holding space indefinitely while remaining personally static. It happens through becoming. Through the individual doing the work that the connection made visible. And when both people do that work, not for each other, but for themselves, the dynamic between them fundamentally changes. The electricity that once felt destabilizing begins to feel like warmth. The mirror that once felt brutal begins to feel like grace. The avoidant soul, the one who withdrew, who ran cold, who disappeared, is not avoidant because the connection meant nothing. In almost every case, they are avoidant precisely because it meant everything. The intensity that you experience as love, they experience through the filter of an unregulated nervous system as threat, as potential annihilation, as the loss of a self that was built, carefully and painfully, to survive without that level of intimacy. They are not running from you. They are running from the version of themselves that you reflect back. And that version, raw, undefended, fully seen, terrifies them in proportion to how deeply it is true. The anxious heart, the one who holds on, who overgives, who monitors and waits and hopes, holds on so tightly because somewhere in their own architecture lives a belief that love must be earned through constancy, that if they simply love completely enough, correctly enough, patiently enough, it will finally become safe for the other to stay. This is not a flaw. It is a learned survival strategy, and it is, quietly, the precise location of the deepest work available to them. Both patterns are responses to the same underlying wound, the wound of conditional love, the wound of a self that was not allowed to simply exist and be met. And this connection, in all its intensity and difficulty, has done something remarkable. It has made both wounds visible at the same time, in the same relationship, with a clarity that ordinary connections rarely produce. That is not a curse. That is an invitation. The question was never whether you are supposed to be together in the conventional sense. The question the connection is actually asking is far more important. Are you willing to become the person who is capable of the love you are seeking? That transformation, that becoming, is the point. Everything else is what follows. There is a particular kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from holding too much. From carrying the weight of an unresolved connection while still trying to live a full life around it. What follows are not rituals. They are not affirmations to repeat until they feel true. They are structural shifts, changes in the internal architecture of how you are holding this experience, and they are available to you right now, regardless of what the other person is doing. The first shift is this: stop measuring your growth by their movement. As long as their behavior remains the primary metric by which you assess your own progress, whether they reached out, whether they went quiet again, whether they seem warm or distant, you remain tethered to a variable you cannot control. And a life organized around an uncontrollable variable is not a life in motion. It is a life in suspension. Your nervous system deserves a stable reference point, and that point can only ever be you. Ask yourself, honestly and without agenda, what would I be healing, building, or releasing right now if I knew, with complete certainty, that the outcome of this connection was already handled? Whatever your answer is, do that. Not as a strategy to create movement in them, not as a spiritual technique to accelerate reunion, but because you deserve to live in full motion. Because the life that is available to you right now, today, is not a consolation prize. It is the actual terrain of your becoming. The second shift is equally important, and perhaps more difficult. Reframe the separation as data, not rejection. The distance, the silence, the cycling between closeness and withdrawal. These are not random. They are not evidence that the connection was wrong, or that you imagined it, or that you are somehow not enough. They are in fact a precise and readable map of where both souls currently are in their capacity for intimacy. Distance is not the opposite of connection. Distance is sometimes the exact form that connection takes when two people are not yet able to hold its full weight without contracting. When you stop reading the silence as abandonment and begin reading it as information, something important happens. The suffering softens, not because the situation has changed, but because you are no longer fighting the reality of it. You are observing it. An observation, unlike resistance, gives you access to clarity. From clarity, you can make real choices, not reactive ones, not fear-driven ones, but choices that are actually aligned with who you are and what you need. The third shift is the one that tends to meet the most internal resistance, which is usually a sign of how necessary it is. Give yourself the love you are withholding until they return. This needs to be said plainly. The love you feel in this connection, that enormous, oceanic, almost unbearable quality of love, that is yours. It arose in you. It lives in you. You did not receive it from them as a transfer. You discovered it through them. The way a match doesn't create fire, but simply reveals that the conditions for it were already present. And what has been discovered cannot be taken away. The capacity you found in yourself for depth, for feeling, for that quality of total and unguarded presence, it belongs to you permanently, regardless of what happens between you and this person. Begin, today, in whatever small and honest way is available to you, to direct that quality of love toward your own life, toward your body, which has been carrying this, toward your creative work, which has been waiting, toward your friendships, your mornings, your own curiosity about who you are still becoming. This is not resignation. It is not giving up. It is not closing a door. It is the recognition that the love you have been safeguarding for a future moment is needed right here, right now, in the life that is already yours. These 3 shifts will not resolve the external situation overnight, but they will change your relationship to it entirely. And that change, interior, quiet, and real, is where everything else begins. So, are twin flames supposed to be together? I think the question, in its deepest form, is asking something else entirely. It is asking, was this real? Did it mean something? Am I allowed to trust what I felt? And to that, yes. What you felt was real. What you felt was the soul recognizing something essential in another. That is not confusion. That is not pathology. That is the oldest form of human intelligence there is. But, supposed to be together, is a question that belongs to time, to calendars, to outcomes, to the part of us that needs to know before it can be. And the deepest part of you, the part that recognized this person before logic had a chance to intervene, that part does not live in time. It lives in the present, in the this, in the quality of awareness you bring to this breath, this day, this version of yourself that is standing here, having already survived something that was designed to open you. You were not broken by this connection. You were broken open, and what flows out of an open thing is always what was already inside.